So hi everyone, in this video we're going to be discussing my theory as to why I believe Ethan Winters might die in Resident Evil 8 Village. So right before we get started, I'd just like to mention this is all just speculation, right? It's just my theory. And but if this is your first time here, consider subscribing, right? In this channel, in Project Wesker, we talk about everything that has to do with Resident Evil. So that includes Resident Evil theories, lore, walkthroughs, and news, right? And so if any of those topics interest you, consider subscribing. And so first things first, right? We've actually never seen Ethan Winters' face. That's really weird, right? The only thing we've actually seen of him is his side profile when you play as Mia in Resident Evil 7 right before you enter the ship. And so that's actually incredibly weird, especially in the Resident Evil series, which, correct me if I'm wrong, has never happened before. And so the only game that I've actually seen remotely use this tactic, right, similar to what occurs in Resident Evil 7 and what seems to be the case for Resident Evil 8, and correct me if I'm wrong, with any other video game, right? But the only game that I've actually played that's used this tactic is Dead Space. So Dead Space actually did use this type of storytelling tactic in the beginning of the game, right? Well, in the rest of the game, the only time you see your character's face is at the beginning of the game, right? And that's just for the first game. Later on, second and third Dead Space game in the series, you do see your character a lot during the cutscenes, right? But and so it is understandable why they use this method, right? It's a smart tactic, since it instills uncertainty, right, in the back of your mind throughout the whole game, right? Because you know, at the back of your mind, you're always thinking, wait a second, am I going to die? My character's pretty expendable, right? And that was the case, like I mentioned in Dead Space 1, right? The first time you see your character's face, there's nothing special about your character. He has a very blah face, right? He just looks like a regular Joe, right? And so it's a smart tactic to use in storytelling because, and especially with video games where you do take control of the person, right, in the story. But the problem, the way Resident Evil is using this tactic is we're actually playing Ethan Winters again in the sequel. And that's actually only happened one time in the Resident Evil series where we played the same main character back to back, right? And that occurred in Resident Evil 6 with Chris, right? Redfield. We did play as Chris in Resident Evil 5. He was the main character. The problem here with Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 is that we still haven't seen Ethan Winters' face, right? That's weird, especially since, you know, Resident Evil 5, we did know Chris, right? We knew him from the previous games. But the fact is that we had a connection to the character, right? It was the fifth game in the sequel. You know, it was the fifth main title in the timeline of the Resident Evil universe, right? And so we did have a history with the character. The problem is that in Resident Evil 7, this was a brand new character. And so this tactic is a smart tactic to use, right? We did, during the whole event of Resident Evil 8, we did play as a nobody, essentially, right? We had no idea who this character was, right? And we also, right, it was basically a blank slate, right? It was almost like a reboot into the Resident Evil series. But the issue is that we're playing as Ethan Winters again in Resident Evil 8. And we still haven't seen his face, right? So you would think, right, as a gamer, right, as a Resident Evil enthusiast, as a fan, right, that we would grow closer to the character. So it's really strange that we still haven't had that connection, right? We still haven't grown our connection with the character, with the main character from Resident Evil 7 and what looks to be the main character in Resident Evil 8. And as I mentioned before, right, the only time we saw part of Ethan's face was when we played as Mia, right, looking at Ethan right before we entered the ship, right, in the events of Resident Evil 7. The other weird thing that occurs in Resident Evil 7, and it also looks to be the same for Resident Evil 8, is the cutscenes. And so I'm actually going to leave a tag to the video where I react to 5 minutes of gameplay that IGN released. And so going back to the video, right, all the cutscenes in Resident Evil 7 were first person. We never saw the cutscenes through a third person. We never saw it as like a very cinematic way, like the other Resident Evil games. We were always looking at cutscenes in Resident Evil 7, and like I said, in Resident Evil 8, through Ethan's eyes, right? We were never seeing everything happen in third person. Everything was in first person. And that's actually really weird, since in the Resident Evil series, right, of games, you know, we actually have had other first person games, like for example, Resident Evil Survivor, right? Resident Evil, Umbrella Chronicles, Darkside Chronicles, right? Those games were solely first person, but they still had third person cutscenes. You know what I mean? And also Darkside Chronicles did have a really cool effect where if you would go around, they would show the other character that was with you, which was very cool. I don't think Umbrella Chronicles did that so much. I think only like in the stats screen. But anyways, so that's very weird. We have had other first-person titles, games, right, in the Resident Evil series, but none of them have just been through the person's perspective. Right, and so that's very weird, right? And just like I mentioned with that 5-minute gameplay that I reacted to, there is a cutscene which we do see at the end of the video. That's again in Ethan Winters' perspective. It almost feels like Capcom, or should I say the Resident Evil developers, are purposefully making Ethan Winters expendable. Personally, I think it could go either two ways. And so either Resident Evil 8 actually reveals Ethan Winters' face, or they continue to hide his face from us. And the reason I say expendable is because we're not growing closer to the character, right? Imagine watching a movie or a TV show, right? Or again, playing a video game, which is what we did in Resident Evil 7, and never seeing the main character's face, right? We saw everybody else's face, right? In Resident Evil 7, we saw all the villains' faces. We saw Mia's face, right? We saw Zoe, Jack, everybody, right? But it's strange that we never saw the main character, right? And it is trying to add a sense of anonymity, right, to the character, But like I was saying, right, it does make the character expendable since we don't know who we're playing as, and they still haven't revealed this to us. And so this is why my theory for Resident Evil 8 is that this might be the end of the road for Ethan. And what's weird is that I know a lot of people that actually like Ethan Winters, right? I've seen it on Reddit posts. I've seen it on Instagram, right? There's Instagram fan pages of people that like Ethan Winters, right? A lot of people I was seeing would say things like, they liked how Ethan Winters wasn't a pro, right? He wasn't a professional like what we've seen with Leon, with Chris, with Jill, right? With Claire, they've all been through extensive, traumatic experiences of pandemics, right? Of zombie situations. And so, they're already, pros at it, right? And so a lot of people were saying, I noticed they were saying that they liked how Ethan, this was the first time he's actually been through any crazy stuff, right, before. And also the fact that he is more human, he's not kind of like a superhero like Leon, Chris, all the main characters in the Resident Evil series, right? And so that's weird, right? There is a huge fan base, right? There is a lot of people that like Ethan Winters, right? For me personally, I thought Ethan Winters was okay. He was kind of meh, but I know a lot of people do like Ethan Winters. And so it's strange that the developers still haven't revealed his face. And like I mentioned, right, we're playing this main character for a second time in Resident Evil 8. And so my theory, and the reason I believe the developers haven't showed us his face haven't showed Ethan Winters his face to us, is they're trying to prevent us from getting closer to the character, right? I think they're trying to keep that anonymity. They're trying to keep that mystery, since we don't even know, right? We don't have a full sense of the character, since we can't even look the character in the eye and see, oh yeah, that guy looks like I can trust him, And I think they're doing that on purpose to try to keep him expendable, right? And I also think that the reason they haven't showed us Ethan Winters' face is because he has a different purpose than what we think he's there to do, right? And so I personally believe that Ethan Winters' character is mostly a means to an end, right? I think it's mostly to push the story further. But it's weird, right? Why haven't we grown closer to the character, right? And I noticed also a lot of people were very upset when the new CGI anime series got announced. Right, a lot of people got upset with the new CGI anime series that got released, and they were actually very surprised and kind of upset that the new Resident Evil Infinite Darkness isn't taking place during the events of between Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8, but is actually taking place between the events of Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5, right? A lot of people were very confused, like, why are we going back to that time when we could be talking about Ethan, right? A lot of people, like I said, there is a lot of people that like Ethan, and a lot of people want to know the character a lot more, right? Since we don't have a lot to know about him, right? We haven't experienced that much with the character, and so a lot of people were kind of frustrated. I'll also leave a tag to the video where I talk about everything, all the information that we know about the upcoming CGI anime series, Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, right above here. But yeah, right. And so a lot of people were very upset. They were like, I want to know more about what's happening, right, in between Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8. There's a lot of, mysteries. There's a lot of unanswered questions that Resident Evil 7 even had, right? That Resident Evil 7 had. And so, yeah, it's understandable why a lot of people are frustrated. And it's also very suspicious to me that the developers still haven't revealed his face. And the other thing that's happening with Resident Evil 8 is that Ethan Winters might not be the only main character, right? Since with the trailers that have released, and the other character that's actually going to be starring in this new story of Resident Evil 8 is Chris Redfield, right? And so Chris Redfield, right, we actually took a break from him in Resident Evil 7. Is it possible that my theory is correct, right? What would be the purpose of tying in old characters from the Resident Evil series if Resident Evil 7 looked like they were trying to reboot the whole series, right? Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? It almost seems like they're like Ethan Winters was just a means to an end. Like his purpose was to push the story forwards, right? But maybe not to finish it, and maybe not be a part of that whole thing, right? And especially since in the trailer, right, we do see Chris murdering Mia, which is very strange, right? That's very out there. Like, again, we don't really know that much information, and the game is about to come out, right, in just 1 month, right? We're just a month away from Resident Evil 8 releasing, right? And also just a couple of days away from Resident Evil Showcase releasing. And so, yeah, I'm very curious, right, to see like what's happening, right? Why is Resident Evil 8 trying to tie in old characters with new characters? Is my theory correct, right? Is that why Chris is there? It's because we might, is it possible that we might play as Chris, right, during the second part of the game, or the ending of the game? Who knows? Or maybe it'll switch characters. These are all things that we don't really know, right? This is just all speculation, and this is just my theory, right? But I'll leave a tag to another video of a character that we might possibly see return in Resident Evil 8, right? And so, but hopefully that's not the case, right? As I mentioned, right, this is just all my theory, right? This is just all my speculations on what I think might be happening in Resident Evil 8, right? Hopefully that's not the case. Like I mentioned, a lot of people are fans of Ethan Winters, and it would be, kind of weird for us to never see his face until he does pass away, right? That would be kind of weird too. I think a lot of people would be pissed off with that. But anyways, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you guys agree with me? Do you guys disagree with me? Let me know what your thoughts are as to why the Resident Evil developers haven't showed, the main characters, the new main character's face, in Resident Evil 7, or maybe in Resident Evil 8, right? Like I said, the game is just about to come out, so let me know your thoughts, right? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if my theory is way out there, or if you do agree with me that this might be the end of Ethan Winters. And so I'll pass the question to you guys, right? The Resident Evil community. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to knife that like button. If this is your first time here, remember to shoot that subscribe button in the face, and also remember to punch that notification bell so that you guys never miss a video, right? And just like I mentioned before, right, I consistently post about Resident Evil content on this channel, right? Everything that has to do about Resident Evil, which includes news, theories, lore, walkthroughs. And so if any of those topics interest you, consider joining the Project Wesker family, right? And also feel free to follow me on my social media on Instagram, right? Because I post different Resident Evil content on there. And so, yeah, feel free to follow me there. And anyways, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'm really hyped for Resident Evil 8, right? I think it's going to be way better than Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 personally wasn't up there on the list of my favorite Resident Evil games, just because, they kind of took it to a whole nother level, right? They kind of played around, they experimented with what kind of worked. We were, no, let's do this, let's take it in that direction. But since Resident Evil 8 is going to be very similar in the atmosphere as Resident Evil 4, right? And the developers are bringing a lot of those aspects back into the game, I think this one might be a really good game, right? But anyways, it's a little too early to say, right? But guys, definitely stay tuned because I will be doing a walkthrough of Resident Evil 8 when it releases. Well, anyways, thank you so much everybody for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. The right to be a god, that right is now mine.